Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Drew. What it do? Hopefully, you are having a fantastic day today. And in today's video, what we're gonna do is, what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna show you guys the full version of the Beyond the Garment podcast, the video Zoom call of the Beyond the Garment podcast. I think it'll be really cool for you guys to see the podcast rather than just listen to it if you've ever listened to it. And if you've never listened to it, this is an opportunity for you to listen to it. One of the guests I had on was Michael James. Michael James is a creative / illustrator who has done worked for the NBA actually before Corona. He works for Network right now, and if you guys don't know what Network is, it's one of the destinations for pop culture, streetwear, and graphic design. So I think that if you're an aspiring designer, if you like art or like graphic design, this would be an awesome podcast for you. He's from the Bronx, so if you're a New Yorker, man, there's that connection. He speaks like a New Yorker. He's an Italian man, so I wanted to get this podcast up on my YouTube channel to give it a try, and if it does well, then I'll maybe do it more often. Some of the better podcasts I'll put on the channel, but I would love to get you guys' feedback on it, man. This is the type of video where, like I said, you click play, you put the phone or put your computer on sleep mode, and you just listen to it. Or obviously the video component of it means you can watch our mannerisms, you can watch how we do what we do. But other than that, man, hopefully you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I will cue the intro, and I'll see you guys in the video. Peace. 2, 1. Today we have a very special episode. This guest was actually requested by one of our awesome listeners. He probably didn't know that. But allow me to introduce you to illustrator and creative Michael James. Michael currently works at Network, which, for those who don't know, is an app that curates, creates, and sells various items pertaining to streetwear and popular culture. And I guarantee Michael is probably going to give you guys a more elaborate answer or elaborate explanation to what Network is. But in today's episode, we're going to break down, his story, his role at Network, and, his source of inspiration when he creates. So let's get into it, man. Michael, or do you go by Michael or Mike, or is there a nickname or something like that? Like, how do people?
Michael. Michael's fine.
Michael's cool.
Michael's cool.
Cool. Yeah. Some Michaels don't. A lot of Michaels don't like to go like by Mike or nothing like that. So that makes a lot of sense.
I've never been never Mike. My mom would call me Mike, but other than that, it's
it's not okay. How you doing today, man? How you feeling?
Yeah, I'm doing well, doing good. Can't really complain. Just making it through another day.
Absolutely. And we had scheduled this podcast originally. You were so busy, and I'm glad we had a chance to kind of reconnect and follow up with it. I think it's even a better time because I'm a more seasoned vet in the podcast game too, man. So it's perfect timing. Let's get into the first question.
You've been rolling out episodes, so it's great.
I've been banging them out, man. I'm trying to get there. So, but let's get into this first question. Question I always start out with, which is, what is your background? Where are you from? And how is it like for you growing up as a kid?
Yeah. So, like you said, my name's Michael. I'm from New York. More specifically, I'm from the Bronx. I grew up here, been out here my whole life. I had a pretty regular kind of childhood, I guess, like a New York childhood, if you can picture it. The Bronx is positioned in a interesting place because you're close to the city, but you're also not too far away from kind of upper New York, so upstate New York.
Right.
So a lot of my time was spent, my family, we would go up. We didn't really do a lot of trips, but we would take trips upstate. So I would spend a lot of time upstate in the Catskills and in nature and all that, but I would also get that city life. I grew up in a pretty predominantly Italian Catholic neighborhood, but I always played basketball, so I had a very diverse group of friends. I didn't really fall into the
definitely
the norm of where I grew up, which was a blessing because it really shaped me to be who I am. Both my parents are teachers, so that was an interesting thing growing up. But they're great. I mean, they taught me so much. And
absolutely. I think my dad was a teacher. Nice. I think when your parents are teachers, or when you have a grandma or grandpa, a teacher, something like that, it can be a huge benefit to your life, in ways that you don't even really recognize.
Mm-hmm.
So you hooped a little bit. You played a little basketball?
Yeah, I played my whole life. I mean, from when I was a kid all
Yeah.
up until high school, and then throughout college, I didn't play at school, but I would just play in like leagues around
Hmm.
around my hometown and stuff. But yeah, and in high school, I was super short. I didn't get my growth spurt until a little later. I mean, I'm not like super tall. I'm just like 6 foot, but like
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like
yeah.
5'2", no lie, like 5'2", 5'3" until junior year. So I was just like this little quick point guard. Um, and that's it. I was just, dropping dimes. I really didn't shoot that much. I had to develop my shot like later in life.
Right.
Yeah. So that,
No doubt, no doubt. I love talking to hoopers or people who play basketball because
yeah,
it's
it's
just
different. It's a
nice.
different world. When you play and it's a different world. It's a different feeling. It's a different world. So
No doubt, no doubt. And we're gonna get into this too. Obviously, it's playing basketball and where you grew up. Obviously, influences
yeah.
some of the things you create. But one of the things I'm looking at right now, and I think I can see this behind you. What are those books behind you? The viewer
Oh
can't
yeah.
see it, but
I got a
what is?
lot of mangas or mangas, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
I'm big into anime, big into Japanese art and stuff like that. So I got a whole over here. There's a bunch of like One Punch Man. I got like Slam Dunk, obviously Dragon Ball Z. I
That's
got like
dope.
20th Century Boys, one of my favorites, and
Oh
then
man.
I have a whole bunch over there too, like the whole Vagabond series, which is like my all-time favorite manga. It's just like insane. So yeah,
Damn, yeah, I love that, man. As a manga playing Hooper, this is my
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
guy,
yeah.
people.
I have a lot of influences, man. I have a lot of very, very eclectic.
Absolutely, man. I know the manga, the art is incredible. So I guarantee you're probably a huge fan of. I mean, I already know that you're a huge fan of those kind of things. I have my collection literally to the left of me right now. Because I saw the Dragon Ball books and I was like,
Yeah.
I think I got the same thing, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Um, let's talk a little bit about illustration and whatnot for you, man.
Yeah, for sure.
You talk about basketball a little bit. You talk about being in nature, and we kind of talked before the podcast started how you enjoy nature and whatnot.
Mhm.
But let's talk a little bit about the art. How did you get into illustrating and art and creating art? Would you consider yourself an illustrator?
Yeah, I'm kind of owning it more recently. Kind of shied away from it my whole life. Kind of was just like, yeah, it's just something I do. It's just a hobby, this, that, and the third. But yeah, I mean, I've been illustrating, doodling, making art since I was a kid, like most kids, and I kind of just never really lost the passion for it. I was always doing it, even before I had turned it into my career, because I wasn't always working in a creative field.
Right.
Because when I was growing up, it wasn't really as viable as a career as it is now. Like, kids nowadays are so fortunate to be in this world right now where being a creative is not only super desirable, but it's actually very profitable. And like these big corporations, I'm not saying you have to go the corporate route, but if you do, like they see the value in that, which it wasn't like that when I was growing up and when I had like entered the job force and stuff like that. So
Right.
yeah, I had always been illustrating and doodling. I was, a terrible student just because of my creativity, like my need to kind of always be doodling or doing stuff. So my notebooks were always full of, random drawings. Like,
Yeah.
speaking of anime and manga, like that's how really I learned how to draw. Like obviously growing up, Dragon Ball Z was like the end all be all. And I was like, yo, I
Huge.
need to know how to draw these. Like, and I would just be looking on the computer or like looking at magazines and be like trying to draw their little like they're very, very sharp. Like all the anime, a lot of the anime characters are so sharp. So
Hmm.
that's really how I started doing it. But it's also kind of in my family. My dad is like an insane illustrator. He never pursued it, but like he's
Wow.
crazy. Like he's one of my biggest inspirations. It's actually wild. And I was actually able to incorporate something that he had drawn for me into something that I did for Franchise Magazine, which was like one of my favorite things. But I'm getting off getting off
No,
topic.
that's incredible. No, we could talk
Yeah.
about it for a second. What did you do for Franchise Magazine? Now I'm curious.
Yeah, so back when the Last Dance was going on,
Hmm.
they wanted to put out this kind of like tribute to Chicago and that Bulls team. And I had been speaking to Justin, one of the creators, the founders of it. I had been speaking back and forth to him from when I was working at the NBA because they had a pretty close relationship with the NBA. And we had
Hmm.
just been like talking back and forth, like, hey, like we need to catch up, like grab a coffee or whatever. And yeah, he had reached out to me. He was like, "Hey, we're doing this tribute for the Bulls team. Would you like to do something?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course." I mean, I was like a huge fan of franchise. And I had been racking my brain like, "What can I make? What can I make?" And that was one of the first times I had actually done something that was an illustration instead of like usually when I would be hit up to do things, I would do design just
Right.
because that was kind of like my way in to get into like this creative field.
Right.
And I was like, you know what? I want to do an illustration. I want to try to do an illustration. I ended up doing two illustrations. One of them was in like my style, which we'll get into. And
Mm-hmm.
the other one I had incorporated my dad at the time back in the day had made like these illustrations of like Jordan as like an alien and then like
Oh
Benny
wow.
the Bull, just like right on the spot, like in his hand style. And I was like, yo, I love them. And they were like two of my favorite illustrations. It's like if I can incorporate these into this piece, it would be like I'm good. So I just like scanned them in, purposed them in
Yeah.
Illustrator. I didn't like retouch them or anything. I really just scanned them in, put it in there, and yeah, it came out super dope. So now I have that like forever. It's just really
That's
cool.
crazy. That's an awesome
Yeah.
opportunity, man. How would you like? You said a little bit about your style. How would you describe your style? Because right now there's someone who's listening who's like who might be scrolling on Instagram right now, looking you up. But
Yeah.
like, how would you, how would you describe what you create?
Yeah. It's such a hard question, right? Because
Tough,
it's like,
tough.
um, I think honestly, at this point, I'm trying to just keep things like very simple. Like, so I would say like simple but not easy. I remember I'm a huge fan of like Charlie Brown, Peanuts, Charles Schultz. He's like one of my biggest inspirations.
Yep,
And I remember always trying to draw Charlie Brown, and it was so hard to do.
it
And I didn't
is.
understand why, because it's such a simple illustration. It's so simple. All of his stuff is so simple, and I couldn't understand why can't I get this to look the way he made it look. Eventually, like over time, like keep doing it, I can do a pretty good like rendition of it. Still can't touch the man, but yeah, I would say I try to go down to something that's simple but not easy. So like you can look at it, it's very easily, understandable for anybody. So a kid might be able to see it and be like, hey, that's cool. Or
Mm-hmm.
like an older person might be able to see it and be like, oh man, that reminds me of something from my childhood. Like that's kind of like where I like to stay. I love to kind of tap into that just because that's what brings me joy. Like when I see those kind of little illustrations, it's just like a break from everything that goes on in the world, especially during these times. It's like
Definitely.
just a nice little moment to just be like, wow. And it took me a while to get there because I think one thing as like an illustrator, as an artist, I think that everyone goes through is like there's so many different styles you can do. And you might be good at so many different types of, let's just say, illustrations. So you can do like this sketchy style, you could do this very like photorealistic style, and I had explored like all of them, and there are ones that I can do. Like I've seen stuff that you do, which is like super dope. Very big fan of the sketches that you do.
Oh,
So that
thank
like
you.
sketch style I think is like very, very good.
Thank you.
So I
Thank
can
you.
also
Thank
do
you.
stuff like that, but I always came back to like these little characters and like creating this little world and like taking things that might not necessarily be in that cartoonish style and making it that style. So yeah, I hope that kind of
No, I think
answered
that's
it.
perfect. I think that is perfect because one of my favorite things about your work and what you create is how easy it is to digest it, right? Like
Mhm,
when I look at it, I get it. You know what I
mhm.
mean? And I think for that's my kind of favorite. Some of my favorite types of artists is where they make things simple. They make things easy to understand. Whether it's a story being told in a graphic, or whether it's just an image of a moment in time. But I think there's something I want to touch on real quick before we move on to the next
For sure.
question that we have scheduled is there might be an artist or someone who's listening to this as well who like is trying to figure out their style, or even
Mhm.
just a creative. Like, there are a lot of people who have their own brand, who have their own just whatever creative journey, or in their own creative journey. How would you just, what advice would you give, I guess I could say,
Yeah.
um, to help them figure out how they, like, what avenue should they go? Like, should they be more photorealistic, or should they have this style or that style or this style? Talk
Yeah.
to me a little bit about that.
Um, I mean, I think for everyone it's a little different. I can only really touch on like my experience. So like
Hmm.
the only advice I could really give is like you can't get so caught up in like I know this is probably cliche, but like what everyone else is doing.
Hmm.
Because I mean, there's artists that I see, whether it's on IG or whether it's just like somewhere on the internet or in magazines or books, and I'm just like, damn, I should be doing that style, or I should be doing paintings, or I should be doing sculptures, or
Yeah.
and it's not to say that you can't do that. You can do every style, but if it's something that you're trying to pursue in terms of like a career and something to get paid for, you have to have something that's recognizable. And to be honest, like my lady, like my girl, she always saw that. She'd be like, "You do all these different styles, but like your characters, like your doodles, like your cartoons, like that's where it's at."
Yeah.
And it took me a long time because it's hard for us, you know, as creatives to look at what you're doing and be like, "Yo, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
This is it," because we're so close to it. But someone else might see it and be like, "Wow, how did you do that?" Um, and it's interesting because when I was in design school, I took that same approach. Like I would just do things that I wanted to kind of make and like things that I would like. And there would be other students who were making these like super intricate designs and super intricate illustrations and things. I was like, wow, like I'm not good at all. Like, these people are like top level, but they would come up to me and be like, I don't know how you made this. It's so simple, but it just gives me this feeling. And I'm like,
Mm,
this is interesting. It's like a reoccurring thing that people will say. So yeah, I would just say kind of like look at all your influences, the things that you really are drawn to, you know, in your downtime. Like what are the things in terms of whether it's artists, whether it's musicians, whether it's movies, like any of that, and just take all of it and kind of just like create your own world. And you just have to go with really just like what you're feeling. It's hard, especially nowadays, just with like social media and all these other influences to get caught up in like chasing different styles to
mm,
kind of do what you know will be easily received and like people
yeah.
will like it's very easy to do. There's a formula to like
Mm,
get viral or whatever, but I do think like staying true to yourself and kind of staying on course with what you truly believe in the long run will be better. And it's just repetition, man. It really is. It
yeah.
really is.
Definitely, definitely. And I think you said something really important there too, where you kind of just have to know yourself, right? Like obviously you grew up, you play basketball, you know,
Mhm.
you're into manga and anime. You always like Charlie Brown. Your dad was an
Yeah.
influence. Like you know yourself in that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so if you're listening right now and you're like, I don't really know, like just take some time to, figure out what you like. You could be,
Yeah.
you might be 16 years old and you don't know what you like, but like figure out what you like. And obviously, like Michael was saying, like social media is a monster sometimes because it shows you what could be if you do it this way, but you got to stay true to yourself.
And I think the other thing that I would say is like you can also get caught up in this like everything's been done kind of mindset. But that's not true because no matter what, like no one can really make what you make if you're doing
So
it from a
true.
genuine place
So
because
true.
it's your outlook. Like, yeah, maybe you can redraw Astro Boy and a million people have done it, but they might not have done it in the way that you see it. So it's like, yeah, exactly, exactly. So that's another thing where it's like you got to keep reminding yourself, like, you know, nobody really can make what I make if you stay true to it and you put yourself into your work.
So true. So true. Michael, let's talk about a little bit about your role at Network, man.
For sure.
Um, yeah, what is your role at Network essentially?
Yeah, it's funny. I know it's sometimes it's hard for people to kind of understand what network is, and I was a
Yeah.
little confused at first too. But yeah, my role is I'm a product designer, so I touch basically everything that has to do with product. That could be, you know, mainly apparel. So mainly, they have some proprietary brands like Official Bootleg is what I really am focused on. So it's their in-house brand that they're building out, and I do all of the product design, so the t-shirts, the hoodies, the sweatpants, the whole line, right?
Yep.
But then in addition to that, I also do the partnership products. So say a company comes to network and they're like, hey, we want to make this furniture, we want to make this chair, you
Mm-hmm.
know, can you guys do that? So I'll basically work with my team and we'll come up with the design for it, send it back to them, they'll send it back to us, revision, you know how it goes.
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
and then and then yeah, so it's all things product, but mainly my focus has been Official Bootleg, which has been super fun and just a really cool creative outlet because we're kind of in this space right now where we're actually doing more of my hand style illustrations, which has been like a super blessing. And we're doing like these little character mashups, which has been really well received. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of excited to see where it goes. So yeah, but you know, shout out to my network team. There, it's a bunch of superstars there. Honestly, my team is crazy. Just the people that I work with are super inspiring, and it's a very collaborative environment, which is really really nice. So
Definitely. And the app is super dope. I mean, I remember when I first I don't even know how I first got introduced to network. Obviously, I'm tapped in with sneakers and fashion and things like that, but When I saw that you got the role, I mean, I was like, damn, kudos to this man, because I mean that's impressive. Like they've always impressed me, and it's super dope that they're also doing a lot more of the work that caters to what your style is too.
For
Didn't
sure.
you just post something today about like
Yeah, yeah.
Charlie
So
Brown or something
today,
like that?
yeah, we did like this because it's like Mario Day. So we've been doing like these character mashups. So we kind of did this Charlie Brown Super Mario mashup. So it was
Yeah.
like taking Mario, putting Charlie Brown's head on him, and then Yoshi and putting Snoopy's head on him, and we call him like Snoshi. So it's pretty cool, yeah.
Yeah, it
And
is
I'm
pretty
I'm
cool.
drawing all those, like, I'm hand drawing all those, so
Yeah,
it's been super fun because again, it's like going back to my influences, like being able to make those in this bootleg way is it's really cool.
it is really cool. And how did you end up in that position? How did you end up in
Yeah.
the role at network? Because I feel like that's an interesting story, and I feel like a lot of people are always curious, like how do I get a job? Maybe it's not network, maybe
Mhm.
it's I don't know, another company, but how do you
Yeah.
get there? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest, like my whole journey to get to where I'm at now has been like a 10-year process, like no lie. Like none of this really happened overnight. And I know it's very easy for people to be like, damn, how can I get there? How can I get there? And for some people it does happen, very quickly. But I was kind of like, I've worked towards this for sorry, I've worked towards this for like 10 plus years. And I had other roles at other companies, which was more graphic design focused.
Hmm.
And we can get into like that whole story, like my whole journey on how I even got into the creative field, if you want to do that, because I do think it's helpful information for younger people, or even not
Yeah,
younger people, because I actually got a late start in my career, in my creative
definitely
career.
for
So yeah,
anybody.
whatever you want to do. If we want to go back and then get to network, or if we want to do network and go back, let me know.
Let's go back. Let's start from the beginning, man. How did you
Beginning.
get involved into graphic design, creating, and
Yeah,
as a professional?
sure. Yeah, yeah. No, so like I said, I'd always been into illustrating and into art and into design, from a very, very early age. And all throughout high school, I had worked on different art shows, and I had done designs for my school, like the mascot and all that stuff. Worked for the school newspaper, things that high school kids do. Um, and I was very like focused on going to art school. Ended up deciding, from different influences here and there, like, oh, you're not going to make money off of it. It's not a viable career. Ended up not going. So I had applied to like only art schools. So at the end of my high school career, I was like, okay, I don't have any school to go to. I don't know what I'm going to do. Ended up just going to community college, just, so I can get courses in. But I was working. I was just working, working, working. I've been working since I was like 14 years old,
Right.
in the restaurant business, just to make money, just to make, and yeah, so I had been working, 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 and I kind of just got into that. I had been working in the restaurant business and like catering halls and stuff like that for a long time. I did like construction jobs. I mean, I did, beer delivery. I've done anything and everything. I've worked in schools. I did like tutoring and English as a second language. I mean, I was just like hustling, just trying to figure it out. But in the back of my mind, I had always really wanted to pursue a creative career, and I just didn't really know how to do it or what I should do. Um, and then, funny enough, I meet my girl, I meet my lady, we start
Mm.
dating. You're in those early phases, and you're trying to be all romantic. So I'm drawing her pictures, I'm sketching her and like sending it to her, and just trying to be like all suave about it. And she's like, um, "You're kind of good at this. Like, what's going on here?" I'm like, "Nah, it's just a hobby. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal." And she's like, "No, like you need to pursue this." And that was like kind of the first time that someone had really been like, "Yo, you have to do this."
Hmm.
And shout out to my parents too, of course. Like they were super supportive in kind of just letting me figure everything out on my own and not pushing me to be like, you have to go to this school or you have to get this job. Which I was very, very fortunate to be able to be put in that position.
Right.
But one thing that they always would say was like, you need to make your own money. Like, we're not going to just give you money or support you. I mean, like I said, they were teachers, so they're not over here making, millions of dollars, which is
Right.
a big crime because, shout out all the teachers. But yeah, so fast forward, I'm with my lady. She's really pushing me to do this. And I'm like, I don't know. It's too late. At this point, I'm probably like 25. So I'm at 25 at this point. I'm like, no way. Like it's over for me. Like I can't, I'm too old. Like it's not possible, which is ridiculous because 25 is super young.
So young.
I end up enrolling in a design boot camp, kind of like it's called Shillington. It's a school in the city, in New York City, that kind of compresses your workload into basically a full work day. So it was Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., full days. And the reason why I decided to do that route was because I already really knew how to do graphic design. I already knew how to illustrate. I already had all the technical skills. I had really self-taught myself, but I just wanted that mentorship. I wanted professionals. I wanted that real world experience so that when the time came, I would be able to handle working in a company, or I would be able to have a portfolio. That was the main thing that really drove me to do it. Was they really helped you get your portfolio together. You were working on real briefs, working on real projects, and it was very, very hands-on, very collaborative. It felt like you were working at a job. So
Right.
That's what really, really shaped like my whole outlook on it. But even so, even doing that, I didn't know once I graduated if it was guaranteed, right? And I kind of took a gamble on myself. I had, been working again at a restaurant, just waiting tables while I was doing that, just so I can have some sort of spending money and some sort of money to pay my bills and stuff like that. And yeah, I was just hustling after that. I was just sending out countless resumes, countless portfolio to just any corporation, any job, just to get my foot in the door. Yeah. Which, looking back, I would say, yes, do that, but also be a little more tailored in where you want to work, because you might end up at a place where it's just, you're not happy with the culture, you're not happy with the work, and you're going to get burnt out. It's not going to help you. But I ended up getting a job at Flywheel. It was a company called Flywheel. They were very similar to Peloton. They were doing like at-home fitness bikes. And I thought, cool, yeah, why not? I'm into fitness, why not? Let's do it. It was a very startup kind of environment. It was great though. I was able to really just learn everything about design. So I was working on the marketing team, learned everything about like marketing. We did a whole rebrand. I was able to learn all that kind of stuff. So like, as you're hearing, this is very, very design focused. Everything was very graphic, like straight up graphic design, like emails, banners, all that kind of stuff, like branding, brand guidelines, all of that stuff, which was great. But again, I always had that itch, like I got to pursue illustrating. I have to pursue illustrating. So through there, one of my coworkers had left and she went to go work for the NBA, right? And I'm like, oh my God, she's working at the NBA. This is like my dream come true. Like, no way. Like, so I'm like, this is crazy. Like she said, I know somebody that works at the NBA. This is wild. So I'm just, still working my job. She hits me up. She's like, hey, there's a designer role open. I'm like, stop playing with me. Like, what are you talking about?
Wow.
Yeah. And she's like, send me your portfolio, send me your resume. And I'm like, oh my God. So I'm like, I send all my stuff, like I spruce everything up, send it over. I don't hear anything back. And I'm like, yeah, this is what happens. Like people say there's things, but then you never get it. So dude, like 8 months pass by, I get an email saying, hey, this is so-and-so from the NBA. We're reaching out about the design position, wanting to know if you're still interested. Now, I thought it was fake. I thought it was somebody messing with me. So I checked the person out on LinkedIn and I'm like, okay, this is a legit person. I was in LA at the time because my friend was actually on MasterChef, which was kind of crazy. Shout out to Chef Stun. Anda, you guys can look him up. He's a great chef. He was actually on MasterChef, which was really, really cool.
Wait, what was his name? What was his name?
Anda.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
He was on MasterChef season 10, so yeah. So I had flown out to LA to go see his taping. And they hit me up like, hey, can you come in tomorrow for an interview? I'm like, oh my God, I'm in LA. Like, what can I do here? So I'm like, oh, I'm actually on vacation. Like, can I do it when I come back? They're like, sure. I go, I do the interview, super nervous, but kind of killed it because I was just like, I know basketball. I know the NBA. I can do this. Like, I can get my foot in the door. I end up getting the job. They called me literally like an hour later. I couldn't believe it. And I was working at the NBA as a designer, a brand designer, for about a year and a half, which was amazing experience. I mean, I'll never forget that experience because, I was mixing my love of basketball with design. And it kind of kicked off my whole exploration of basketball with art.
Mm-hmm.
which we can get into after. But yeah, so I was working as a brand designer there, which was just like an incredible learning experience. I was working with different brand partnerships, working with the Nike team, working with, a whole bunch of different companies that work with the NBA because they're such a huge global brand. Um, Insert the pandemic. They start making cuts because, they weren't generating any business because the season stopped.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like my whole entire team got let go. Uh,
Wow.
and I was just like, damn, all right, I lost my dream job. Like, it's crazy. But all right, like, it was a weird moment because of everything that was going on in the world. I really couldn't complain just because I was safe. I had my health, my family had their health. So many people were losing jobs, so many people were unemployed. And, I was in a good position where I was able to, had some money saved up where I had this time to kind of just explore what my next move would be, which I know is super privileged and it's such a blessing. And that was never lost on me how much of a blessing it was. So
Right.
I kind of just I never really got like down about it. I kind of just had my head down. I was like, yo, I need to keep hustling. I need to kind of figure out what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I just been freelancing. I had just been freelancing here and there, just working with different people, different companies as a designer, because that was just kind of like my bread and butter way to make money. But during that time, I was also just putting out more illustrations, just diving more into illustration because, we were allotted all this time to
Yeah.
just, explore more things creatively. And so many things were birthed out of that. Um, and I was at a point where I'm like, okay, I'm ready to get back into like a role. I want to kind of be more niche with it. So back I went to, setting out the portfolio, hitting people up. And I'm just like, I'm thinking like, there's no way I'm not going to get a job, man. I have the MBA on my
Exactly.
resume. I got MBA work. Like, no one's going to say no to me. I'm like, yeah, you would think, but the job hunt is crazy. So, um, yeah, I had been talking to different companies, but again, it was just like, do I really want to work at these places and just keep doing the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
And I had been on IG just scrolling around, and this guy Ian, who had been, just showing genuine love in the same way that you do, and same way so many people do on Instagram, just like, hey man, love your work. Hey, this is a dope illustration, fire, whatever. And he had been doing that for a while. And I go on his page and I look and it says that he works at Network. And I'm like, oh, dope. I'm like, Network, cool. And I had seen that Network was hiring. They were trying to look for a designer. And I never do this, hand to God. I never hit people up like, hey man, I'm looking for a new role. Like, but for some reason, I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna hit this guy up. I'm just gonna ask him. So I actually hit him up through IG, and I was like, hey man, like I never do this, but I'm actually currently looking for a new role. I just wanted to know if you guys were hiring. And he
Man.
was like super receptive. He's like, dude, like I've shown my VP your work. Like, yeah, like let's get something set up. But it wasn't like overnight like that. I freelanced for them for a little while, doing work with them, kind of to feel things out. We were going back and forth for about a month or two. And then eventually they gave me the offer. And yeah, so now I'm here and it's been great. So I guess the biggest takeaway from that super long story, the compressed version of that would be keep working hard. Don't lose sight of your dream. Even if it feels like, there's no way I can do this, whether you're working, an odd job or working in retail or working in a restaurant or working construction or really working any type of job, like there's no shame in it. There's literally no shame in it. I've always had the mindset of like, no job is beneath me. I come from a working family.
Mm-hmm.
Literally working men and women are the backbone of this country. So it's like, that's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yep.
But if you are fortunate enough, because it is a privilege and it is a blessing to be able to work in a creative field, because so many people are creative, they just never get that opportunity for whatever
Mm-hmm.
circumstances they're in. If you do get the opportunity, just take it, take chances, reach out to people, and just like be a good person. Kind of just be humble. Don't be super cocky about it. Don't be pretentious about it. Just
Definitely.
yeah. So that would be my
Definitely.
takeaway.
I love that story. Those are the best kind of stories too. Like the story that, you didn't even start out initially, when you graduated high school, you didn't even realize that this could be something for you, and it becomes like the thing that you love to do. Like
For sure.
that's what that excites me. I don't know,
For
like gives
sure.
me like
Yeah.
goosebumps a little bit because it's like anything's possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like anything is truly possible. I think there's a lot of things that we can unpack there for a second.
For sure.
So one of the things you just talked about how you DM'd one of your supporters.
Mhm.
I've been telling everybody on this podcast, it goes down in the DM, man. DM conversations can lead to more than what
Yeah.
you know can expect.
I mean, that's how we got here. So you and I.
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly. You know, the prime example is right here, folks. I mean, literally everything I do is in the DMs, honestly.
yeah,
I mean, it really is. Um, I would be, I feel like I'd get slandered if I didn't ask you a little bit.
for
How
sure.
was it working at the NBA? Because I mean, that's incredible. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah. That's it's confidential, man. I can't talk about that. Adam Silver will come for me, bro. He's gonna come for me. He's gonna send the goons.
He'll send Zion on you, boy.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It was honestly, it was like I said, it was it's something I'll never forget. It's an amazing place to work, and it's also a lot different than I thought it would be. Like I was like a kid in a candy shop thinking I would walk into this building that had just like basketball courts everywhere and people were just like playing basketball. Like, that's not the case. It's a global corporation, and it's,
Yeah,
on par with Apple and Disney, and it's a machine. It's a machine. It could be very, very overwhelming. It could
definitely.
be very, very overwhelming. Be like, wow, like I'm working for this company that influences so many people around the world. Not just domestically but overseas.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, to me, it was like the biggest learning experience. I learned so much. I just on a brand side of things, like how brands really, really work, and just what really goes into just these little minute things that, us as a consumer, like consumer facing products or consumer facing content, we see it, and it could be a 1 minute IG post, and
Yeah,
that thing has been going through the ringer for months, and it's really, really insightful and really eye opening just to see what goes into that. And it's not something that I probably would have wanted to do forever, just because it was a little too corporate for my liking. But
right.
because that's the thing, when you work for a big company like that, you sometimes lose your creative freedom just
Hmm.
because they have such strict brand guidelines. You have to
Yeah,
kind of just stay in that box.
yeah, very
But
rigid.
again, you also are met with that challenge, so you have to creatively kind of come up with these new ways to work creatively within a box, which is how you kind of promote growth and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But yeah, I made so many connections, met so many great people, and again, it's something that, I mean, I'm pretty sure I have like little my little name tag is still right over
yeah.
here.
I see
So
it. I see it.
yeah,
That's awesome,
uh,
man.
yeah,
That's
for
so
sure.
cool. And you totally right. I totally didn't even think about. I mean, when anyone watches basketball or any professional league, you're just presented with product, but there's so
Mhm.
much that goes into every decision. And while as a fan, you're a lot of times focused on the athletes,
Yeah,
right? The people who make things entertaining, advertisements. The every team has their own logo, and they change their logo like every 2 years now. It seems like
yeah.
jersey design and just stadium design, and there's so much that goes into it that makes it a product. I just got reminded it's a dream. It's a dream kind of company I can only imagine to be a part of for sure. I lost my train of thought. Where are we
That's
going?
cool.
Um, let's talk a little bit about you know your uh no, maybe some people you're also a fan of, or do you have
Sure.
anybody else that you look at, that you can specifically say, yeah, that person, they're a dope artist.
Mhm,
Obviously you went to when you went to school, or when you were designing with other people in your class, you thought they were cool. But
mhm,
like, is there anybody maybe like you're a fan of, you know what I mean?
mhm. I mean, a lot of like, I mean, I'm a huge fan of just like older artists, to be honest. Like I kind
Yeah.
of just like, it's like a lot of my influences are like the people that I'm like super fans of. But I mean, yeah, the people I work with right now, I'm a big fan of. Like one of the dudes I work with, his name is Wesley So. He's like insane designer. He worked at Urban Outfitters, and he's insane, like with type design and everything that
Mm,
he does, like with his textures and just his manipulation and just his creative eye and his mind is like insane, absolutely wild. But other than like, my friends or people that I know, are like honestly my dad and like my grandma and like my girl, she's like super creative, and she's
Definitely.
super inspirational. And that's just like another blessing in itself if you have a,
Mhm.
significant other who's also creative and
Definitely.
is in that world. You kind of just push each other.
Mhm.
um but yeah, like some of my biggest influences in terms of like my work and like what you can kind of like see through my work would be, like I said, like Charles, I can never say his last name, Charles
Shorts.
Schultz.
Yeah, yeah.
So obviously Peanuts, Charlie Brown, Bill Watterson. So he did a Calvin and Hobbes. So he's a big influence for me. Again, anime manga. So like Asuma Tezuka, who created Astro Boy. That's
Yep.
my guy right there.
Yep.
Saul Steinberg. If anybody's listening, you guys can look these guys up. Saul Steinberg, incredible. He did a lot of stuff for like the New Yorker back in the day. He has like
Mhm.
a super nice like line style, which is just like insane.
Mhm.
Then obviously Akira Toriyama,
Yep.
Dragon Ball Z fame, and then yeah, just Miyazaki from like Studio Ghibli and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, those are just my biggest influences, honestly.
Definitely. I love it, man, cuz each person can have their own influences too. Like, are there some crossover cuz I like some of the same things as you, but like
Yeah.
if you're listening right now, like, there's endless amount of artists. Like Michael James is one of my inspirations. I'm not going to
Oh
lie to
my
you guys.
God, thank you too.
No, I'm not going to lie to you guys cuz he does some really dope stuff. So, we're kind of coming to the close of the podcast, man. There's two questions I want to ask you before we kind of ask
For
about
sure.
your social medias and whatnot. The first one is about your process.
Mhm.
Because I find this really interesting, and this is a kind of almost like a selfish question because I really want to know.
Mhm.
But like, what is your process when you're given a task or given a project that you're gonna create or start creating? How do you go about those first couple steps and the steps afterwards, and when you need to create an illustration or a graphic or
Mhm.
whatever?
Yeah. So step number one, I put on some old school R&B, set the mood.
I
You think
love
I'm kidding? You think I'm kidding? That is my work music. I got my headphones in. I'm listening. I'm listening to New Edition. I'm listening to Boyz
Okay.
II Men, and then I'm
Okay.
going. And then I'm going into the early 2000s. I'm doing Tyrese. I'm doing Mario. I'm doing Omarion and Bobby Valentino. That's where I'm at.
Yo, this is my dude right here. This is my favorite guy.
I'm just we're going back to DeBarge. I'm listening to DeBarge. I'm just trust me. That's where I'm at. No, but in all seriousness, it really depends. It depends on kind of like the task of the brief. If it's work related, it's a little more streamlined. It's very like protocol. I'm getting my brief. I know I have my deadline. Kind of mapping myself out. I'm very adamant on like pen to paper. I know there's like a million productivity apps, and there's, you can use it on your computer, use it on your phone, but like I just have my notebook, I have my pen,
Mhm.
write down what I need to do, kind of just have a checklist. Usually I try to like get things in a good place the night before, just so I already know the next day, like, okay, I got to do this. Cause I like to kind of have my mornings to kind of get right and like set my tone. But yes, so if it's for work, it's a little more streamlined because I'll have my brief. I'll know what I'll have to do.
Right.
Um, Again, I'll just be working on a deadline, so I'll try to be as organized as possible. And like the number one thing is like not harping on it being absolutely perfect. If you have a deadline, your client or someone would rather see something than
Yeah.
see nothing.
Yeah.
And I've learned that many times. I've had clients that were upset because I'm like, oh, I gotta push it, and they're like, I just want to see something. And
Mhm.
in my head, I'm like, it's not perfect. I don't want to share it yet, but I would say don't get caught up in it, because what you might think is not perfect, a lot of people probably won't even notice. And again, once they give you revisions, you can just
Change.
fix it.
Yeah.
But if it's for my own personal work, man, it comes in waves, to be honest. And I think when you get that wave of creativity or the inspiration, a lot of times it comes from things outside of, looking at art or looking at illustrations. It'll come from, after I come back from a walk or a hike, or if I'm driving in the car and I'll get an idea. Or honestly, I know everyone says this, but best ideas come in the shower. You're
The
just like
shower.
with yourself and you're just like, damn, I got this idea. And like something that I don't do enough, but I would like to start doing more, is just like jotting down that idea right away. Because once you get that idea, you got to just like hit the ground running and do it. Because when those waves of creativity come, they come, but they also go, at least for
Mm-hmm.
me. And when
Mm-hmm.
they go and you try to force it can go one or two ways. You can break that creative block just by like repetition, but it can also just get you down and you'll get like imposter syndrome and be like, yo, I'm just not good at this. What happened? Like, I can't make something better than the last thing I made.
Yeah.
Um, but when it comes to my personal work, I really just like to put on some music that inspires me, some good music. If it's not R&B, it's some jazz music. It's just like some like easy listening stuff. And then I usually like to put a little incense or a little candle.
So
I do.
smart.
I'm very, very, very adamant about like environment and just
Yeah.
like where you're at can very, very much influence what you make. So yeah, and then I'll just sit down. I'll usually have an idea, whether it be from a movie I watched or a song I was listening to or something that I had seen, or you know, it could even be something from years ago from like a conversation I have with my friends or something. I'm like, oh, let me try to like do something with that.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be a cultural relevant thing. So like if it's All-Star Weekend, I'll be like, oh, I kind of want to make some little doodle illustration about All-Star Weekend. And yeah, I'll just look at like I have a bunch of archived photos and inspiration pics, like a mood board, if you want to say, um, which I don't really keep it on IG. I kind of like a lot of times like want to keep it to myself just because it's like, I don't want to give people the sauce. Like, but yeah, I'll just kind of look at that stuff and just have a mishmash of things that I want to make it look like. And my stuff is very inspired by other things, and yeah, they're like my original ideas, but I also know that they're inspired by everything around me. And then I'll just get to it. Usually I'll sketch it first on paper. Once I get it into like a pretty decent spot, I'll bring it, I'll scan it onto my iPad. I'll
Mm-hmm.
use Procreate a lot. I really have grown to love Procreate. At first it was a little learning curve for me just because like the feel was a little different, but I got this really cool like skin to put over my iPad that makes it feel like drawing, like it feels like pen to paper.
I know exactly the one.
Yeah. So I'll bring it into there. I'll retrace it, and then usually I'll color it on there if I do a color illustration. If not, I really do like black and white. Experiment with color here and there if it calls for it. And then I'll just bring it into Photoshop. I'll cue it up in the dimensions, and that's it. Off it'll go. If it's for print, I'll make sure it's print ready. But most of the time, a lot of this stuff people don't even really see because it's just me doing it for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I have a love-hate relationship with like IG. Put stuff up sometimes, I don't other times, and I probably should be more consistent, but I'm not because my illustrations are very, very personal to me. They just remind me of my childhood. So
Definitely.
it's like sending your little babies out there. So yeah.
It really is. It really is. I
Yeah.
have a hard time the same thing. That's why I kind of stick with the fashion stuff because
Mhm.
it's not as personable. You know what I mean? When I
Mhm.
draw, it's more like, I love this. It's kind of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I put a lot of hours into it.
Now you should put them out, man. I've seen the videos you put out. You gotta start sharing more.
I know I gotta find a way to integrate it into my account. But
Yeah,
one
for
of the things one of the things that you said I loved is mood setting.
sure.
I I use essential oils and diffusers,
Yeah,
but I want to get into incense because I feel like incense are even just more like I've been in people's apartments and houses that have incense and I love the smell of those.
yeah, yeah.
What kind of incense do you burn?
Right now I have like this incense from Noah. So the brand Noah, like
Oh
Noah
yeah, yeah,
NYC. They
yeah.
have this like really, really nice. I think it's what is it? I think it's what's the scent? It's lotus, so it's like lotus plant. It's really,
Oh
really nice. It smells really good. But other than that, honestly, my girl gets all like the best incense. There's this
yeah.
there's this there's this store in LA that we had gotten incense from, which was really, really nice. But I usually stick with like either like flower scents, so if it's like lotus or it's like lavender,
Mm,
or go down like the kind of like patchouli, kind of cedar type of
yeah.
stuff. But yeah, I like incense more than candles. I feel like it's better for like the air.
Yeah, I think it is better.
And sometimes candles, unless it's like a really like natural candle. Some candles have like chemicals in them. I'm not really about that.
Yep, yep.
Um, but yeah, I think incense is nice. It's also just like a little meditative. You got the smoke going, and
Mhm.
it's just nice to set the mood. So yeah.
Definitely, definitely, man. And I thank you for going through the process. Really insightful. And one one of the better episodes I feel like we've had. So I really appreciate you.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
One of the last questions I want to ask you, and you've touched on this before, but I
Mhm.
kind of just want to capstone the podcast. And that question is, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone who wants to be uh, in the creative, wants to be a creative, oh my gosh, wants to, how do I say it? Have a career as a creative.
Yeah,
There we go. Has a career as a
yeah,
creative.
sure.
So
I would say just get your foot in the door. Find something that you know will get you working and that will get you in the door, and then from there pursue what it is you really want to do. So as long as you have people's attention, as long as you're making connections, you'll eventually be able to do what you want to do. Don't get discouraged if you're not doing or making exactly what you want to make for monetary gain right away, because it's not always the end goal. Honestly not even always the goal. But yeah, also you can, another word advice, like you can find creativity in like any field that you're in, honestly.
truly,
You don't necessarily have to be an artist or an illustrator. You could find creativity in anything, in everyday things. Art is everywhere, and there's so many careers and work paths that are creative. And there's, if you're a mechanic, you're creative. If you're a chef, you're creative. If you're a gardener, you're creative. I mean, there's beautiful creativity in everyday life. So but yeah, if it's specifically working in a creative career, I would say just really work hard, really do it, really pursue what you want, and kind of narrow it down. So I know it's very easy to see this landscape and be like, oh my God, I could be a designer, I could be an illustrator, I could be a creative director, I could be a photographer, I could be a coder, I can be so many things. I can work in fashion, I can work with garments. It gets overwhelming, but understand that like just because you're doing one as a profession doesn't mean you have to let go of all the other ones. So yeah,
definitely. I love it, man. Thank you so much
for sure. Thanks for having me.
yeah, man. And where can people find out, more about you, social medias and things like that?
Yeah, it's pretty easy. It's just Michael James. Just
Michael
look
James.
me up. It's really just Instagram. I don't really use any other platform. So yeah.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Well, thank you for being on. Thank you for agreeing. Like I said, one of the better episodes and one of the better podcast guests.
Thanks, man.
Just a pleasure having you for real.
Yeah, for sure, man. Let's keep it going. I'm gonna talk to you obviously after this. So for sure.
Boom, just like that. What do you guys think of Michael James's story? Like, what do you guys think about some of the things that he has done in his life? You can look at his art and whatnot by just searching, I think, at Michael James on Instagram. I think that's what he said, and should be able to find him, pretty easily. But I definitely enjoy having the podcast on the YouTube channel. Let me know if you guys enjoyed it or not. Comment that down below. Let me know if you didn't watch it. If you just clicked on the video initially, I guess if you didn't watch it, you wouldn't be at this point in the video. So, but hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Like I said, I have a vlog coming out this Friday to basically share with you guys the drop of the Spring in the Rockies t-shirt. If some of you have seen that on Instagram, I also have a lot of sneakers coming in, guys, a lot. So we have the ALD 1300s. They should be coming in. We have a couple pairs of 327s, like I think 3 pair of 327s. And I still need to get the Raptor lows on feet. We had a snowstorm, so I haven't had a chance to do that. So there's a lot of content coming for the channel. If you enjoy the content, subscribe, all those things. All right, enough talking. Enjoy the rest of your day. Live a little bit of life. I'll see you guys in the next video.